Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you are all well. You amazing, amazing people. You're looking amazing. You must have had a good start to the weekend, and I hope it continues. Don't forget, tomorrow night, the failed live over on Break the Ice will be taking place. And if you check out a video that I'm going to release tomorrow, before that live on this channel, it might just be a little bit more of an incentive to head over and catch us over there. So keep your eyes peeled. But anyway, we've got some stuff to talk about. In video one earlier today, we talked about Christopher Tapp. He was the guy who was wrongfully convicted and spent 2 decades behind bars before being released. 2 years later, exonerated, and then he went out on to be awarded $11.7 million for the time that he lost unlawfully. Now, sadly, Christopher Tapp would go on to lose his life. So a tragic, tragic turn of events. But I saw a comment yesterday, and it was around the time that I'd been filming that video because I'd filmed it in advance. And people were talking about, and it wasn't just one person, it was a few people saying there's no evidence, you've got no evidence that would suggest that Moscow Police Department have done anything wrong. You know, that this person has been framed. You know, Brian Coburg's been framed. Where do you get that from? Because if there is no evidence of it, there's no evidence of corruption or coercion or anything like that, then this is just defamatory and it needs to stop. And I said to this person, I think I ended up removing the person because I'd seen that this was just a person who, every single person who was commenting, they were just attacking every single person who had anything to say, and I got fucked off with it. But at the end of the day, I always say to people, if you want to come over to this channel and have a difference of opinion, great, fantastic. And I have some fantastic relationships with people who do not agree with me. But if you want to come over onto the channel and act like a complete prick, that just isn't going to wash hair. You know, we deal with enough pricks in real life without dealing with them on hair as well. So, that being said, it kind of led me to believe that, you know, some people obviously have their head stuck in the sand. You're right in the fact that we can not 100% definitively prove that Moscow Police Department or the FBI or anybody surrounding the Idaho 4 case have done anything wrong in terms of framing. We could argue that they haven't handled the case very well, and the fact that this procedure seems to be just gag, 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 hide, 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 and they feel that that is going to have a positive outcome. That, to me, is an error on their part. And all that has done has fueled the flames for multiple people to be attacked, not just Brian Coburg, but the likes of Bethany Funk, Dylan Mortensen. Because ultimately, if they were a lot more transparent about things and open and honest and everything was out there for everyone to see, then a lot of questions that people have, and quite rightly so, people are entitled to have, you know, questions. People are entitled to their thoughts and opinions. You can't stop that, and it's narcissistic to believe that you have the power to stop people having an opinion. But anyway, get to the point, Harsh. I hear you saying, and you've got a good point, but let's just look at this. So this is, and there will be a link in description to the Marshall Project, but this looks specifically at 2022. In 2022, exonerations hit a record high in the US. This is going to shock you, by the way. Globally, potential innocence has long outweighed potential guilt. That philosophy of justice may not be one that the majority of Americans endorse. And we'll come back to Lamar Johnson. This is the Marshall Project Closing Argument newsletter, a weekly deep dive into a key criminal justice issue. And you can have it delivered to your inbox. Again, link in description. English legal scholar Sir William Blackstone famously wrote in 1765 that it's better to have 10 guilty persons escape than 1 innocent suffer. It's easily one of the most well-known and frequently cited maxims in modern law. History is full of variations of the idea, while other examples often feature different ratios. The core concept reverberates through centuries and across cultures around the globe. It's worse to punish innocent people than to let guilty go free. Today, a majority of Americans may not agree. In a series, and I don't think it's just Americans, by the way. It isn't about picking on on American civilians. This is the same in this country, and I would imagine it's the same across the globe. But this was specifically looking at the US. In a series of recent surveys that polled more than 12,000 people, law professors Brandon Garrett and Gregory Mitchell found that more than 60% of Americans consider false acquittals and false convictions to be equally bad outcomes, and a sizable minority viewed wrongful acquittals as worse than wrongful convictions. Mitchell and Garrett also found that in mock trials, those more concerned about wrongful acquittals than wrongful convictions were more than twice as likely to convict after viewing the same evidence. So let's just consider that for a second. So this is people who they are in the mindset that it's worse to let a guilty man walk. Their mindset would be, I don't get it. We can't risk this person being evil, being going to commit this crime again. So fuck it. Let's just get him locked up just in case. That's the backbone of that. So let's go back to it. If real-life jurors are bringing similar attitudes into actual trials, it may contribute to wrongful convictions and hence the need for exonerations. There were a record 238 exonerations in 2022. So that's just in 12 months, 238 exonerations. There you go. That is heading towards one every day and a half, something like that. Probably more than that. Maths was never my strong point. According to a database maintained by the National Registry of Exonerations, last week I had the opportunity to share the story of Erline Brooks Colbert, whose brother and son, Elvis Brooks and Cedric Dent, accounted for 2 of those exonerations. Both men were convicted primarily on eyewitness identification, which contributes to an overwhelming majority of wrongful convictions, according to the legal aid group The Innocent Project. This is something that we've seen around around Idaho, and again, we're looking back at Christopher Tapp. That was the Innocence Project who'd got involved with Christopher Tapp. That was also the case for Jason Hogan, who was exonerated for a 2000 kidnapping and robbery in Colorado earlier this month. His lawyer said that while reinvestigating the case, it was discovered that police and prosecutors withheld exculpatory evidence, as is common in exoneration cases. So let's just put that out there again. So in cases that go on to be exonerated, there is exculpatory evidence that is proven to have been withheld. Okay. The day before Hogan's release, 49-year-old Patrick Brown had a 29-year-old rape conviction vacated in a New Orleans courtroom. Brown had been charged with the rape of his stepdaughter, who has always maintained that Brown was not the man who did it. I've written over 100 letters, mailed them to the DA's office. I've shown up unannounced to talk to someone and been turned around, she told the court. Uriah Courtney, who was exonerated in 2013, spoke to the appeal this week about the lasting trauma of the time he spent in prison on a wrongful conviction for the kidnapping and rape again. I've got PTSD. Sometimes I'm still angry. I lost 8 years of my life. Sometimes I think of what could have been, what could have happened if I wasn't arrested. What I was accused of could have gotten me killed in prison. I lived in fear daily, Courtney told reporter Meg O'Connor. Like Courtney, Christopher Dunn was also convicted without any physical evidence, and the 2 eyewitnesses who tied Dunn to the 1990 St. Louis murder have since recanted. On Monday, then St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner filed a motion to vacate Dunn's conviction. As it turned out, it would be one of Gardner's last acts in office, as she resigned the following day. Weeks ago, Gardner announced that she would step down amid an effort by state legislators to remove her from office and reports of turmoil in her office. She had been expected to remain in the job until June. It's unclear what Gardner's departure means for Dunn. Governor Mike Parson appointed former U.S. Attorney Gabe Gore to the job on Friday. But let's just skip down here. Look, that's largely due to Fox's efforts at tossing convictions tied to corrupt cops who extorted money from and planted drugs and guns on residents of the city's Ida B. Wells housing project, virtually all of whom were black for nearly a decade. So again, we're looking at situations where evidence planting, exculpatory evidence being held. And I'm not saying that this is what we're seeing in Moscow, Idaho. But what I'm saying is, if you step back and you look at the Idaho 4 case and you think to yourself, right, so we've got a situation where every single thing about this case is so hush-hush and secretive. We do have questions regarding the car. There's no certainty around anything. There are questions around everything. There's circumstantial evidence, yes, but that circumstantial evidence comes with questions. Even as much as the white Hyundai Elantra, we don't know because originally we were told they were looking for a different white Hyundai Elantra. Now all of a sudden they've got this white Hyundai Elantra. Then they didn't have any eyewitnesses. All of a sudden they've got an eyewitness, which just so happens to be something that plays a massive part in convictions of this nature. And we see in these studies, and I've done this before, I've gone over the statistics of exonerations. And again, the hiding of exculpatory evidence. Again, we have a situation that would lead you to believe it was a potential that Brian Kohberger's trial was, or the original hearing that was set up, was jumped over with the grand jury indictment. You know, he never got the preliminary hearing that was set. And why is that? Because all of a sudden around that situation there is a potential for exculpatory evidence, apparently. We don't know because we never got the fucking hair, did we? But what I'm saying is all we want is justice for these kids, young adults. Shouldn't call them kids, they're not. My mistake. We want justice for them. We want the right person to be punished. But history tells us, and statistics tell us, that you can't always judge a book by its cover. And that is the Brian Kohbergers and the law enforcement. You can't look at these people and think you know them. You can't look at a system that's in place and think it's doing the best for justice sake, for instance. It might well do. And later on it might be proven, but so many people are already jumping in this basket over here that condemns everyone. And it's wrong. Think about it. Let me know down below. And I'll catch you all tomorrow.